The words hit me like a slap across the face. Families with two mothers are an abomination against nature and a danger to our children. Councilman Robert Harlan bellowed into the microphone during his live town hall broadcast that was streaming across every major news channel. My stomach twisted as I realized the signature on the approval letter for his $5 million community revitalization project was mine. Avery Thompson. Just 2 days earlier, I had signed it without a second thought, believing it was for the greater good of the city. I sat frozen at my desk in the Illinois State Funding Office, the glow of the monitor casting harsh shadows across the scattered paperwork that defined my days as a senior grants administrator. The councilman continued his tirade, his face red and veins bulging on the screen while the audience cheered in the background. He spoke of traditional values and the need to protect children from what he called unnatural influences. Each sentence felt personal because Kira and I had built exactly the kind of family he was condemning. Our daughter Mia was 7 years old, adopted after years of waiting and fighting through the system. She called us both mom, and the three of us had created a home filled with laughter, bedtime stories, and weekend park visits that felt as real and loving as any other. The realization settled like lead in my chest. I had reviewed Harlan's proposal myself. It promised after-school programs, job training for single parents, and community events in underserved neighborhoods on the south side of Chicago. The numbers checked out, the community letters of support were genuine, and the budget was tight but feasible. I had recommended full approval and my boss had signed off the next morning. Now those funds, $5 million of taxpayer money, were earmarked for a man who had just publicly declared war on families like mine. My hand shook as I paused the video, replaying the moment. He pointed directly at the camera and said people like that should not be allowed to raise children. I grabbed my phone and texted Kira. "You need to see this. Harlan just went off on live TV." Her reply came within seconds. "Watching now. Come home soon. We need to talk." The drive from the downtown office to our brownstone in Lincoln Park felt endless. Traffic crawled along Lakeshore Drive while my mind raced through every possible outcome. Could I revoke the funding? What would that do to my career? Would it even be legal? By the time I pulled into our driveway, the sun was setting, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple that did nothing to ease the knot in my stomach. Kira met me at the door, her dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail and her eyes already red from crying. She wrapped her arms around me without a word, and for a moment the world narrowed to just us. Mia was upstairs doing homework, the sound of her pencil scratching against paper drifting down the stairs. We moved to the kitchen where Kira had already poured 2 glasses of wine. She slid one across the counter to me. "He said our family is dangerous, Avery." "Dangerous? How do we explain this to Mia when kids at school start repeating it?" I took a long sip, letting the cool liquid steady my nerves. "I signed the papers, Kira. My name is on the approval. If I try to pull it now, it could blow up everything. My job, our stability, the projects we support. But if I do nothing, I feel like I'm funding the very hate that wants to erase us." She reached across and took my hand, her touch warm and familiar after 8 years together. We had met in college at a pride event, both of us shy and unsure but drawn together by shared dreams of a quiet life. Kira was a graphic designer who worked from home, so she could be there for Mia after school. I was the steady one, the one who navigated bureaucracy to build the life we wanted. Now that steadiness felt like a cage. We talked late into the night, whispering so Mia would not hear. Kira wanted me to fight, to go public and call out the hypocrisy. I argued for caution, pointing out that revocation required proof of misconduct and Harlan's speech, while vile, was protected speech. The inner conflict tore at me. Part of me wanted to storm into his office and demand answers. The other part remembered the mortgage, the tuition fund for Mia, and the quiet pride I felt every time I helped a community group get the money they needed. By the time we went to bed, I still had no answers, only the heavy weight of a decision I knew I could not avoid. The next morning, Mia bounded down the stairs with her backpack and a bright smile, asking if we could have pancakes for dinner. I hugged her tightly, inhaling the scent of her strawberry shampoo and wondering how long we could shield her from the ugliness outside our door. At the office, my colleagues were buzzing about the speech. Some laughed it off as typical political theater. Others shook their heads in disapproval, but no one seemed ready to act. I buried myself in reports, pretending the knot in my chest was not growing tighter with every passing hour. By lunchtime, the video had gone viral with over 2 million views. Comments poured in, both supporting Harlan and condemning him. I scrolled through them in my office, feeling each hateful one like a fresh wound. Then my phone rang. It was my mother. Avery, I saw the news. That man is right about some things. You and Kira need to think about what's best for Mia. Traditional families work for a reason. Her words stung more than Harlan's because they came from someone who was supposed to love me unconditionally. I hung up without responding the first time in years I had done so. The day dragged on, and by the time I left the office I knew the confrontation was coming. I just did not know yet how much it would cost. The following week passed in a blur of sleepless nights and whispered arguments with Kira. I kept replaying the speech in my mind, dissecting every word, searching for a legal loophole that would let me pull the funding without destroying my career. The Illinois funding statutes were clear. Once approved, a project could only be halted for fraud, misuse of funds, or significant public safety concerns. Hate speech, no matter how disgusting, did not qualify. My boss noticed my distraction during our Tuesday staff meeting and pulled me aside afterward. "Everything okay, Avery? You seem off." I forced a smile and lied about a family issue. He nodded, but the look in his eyes told me he suspected more. Kira pushed for action. She had printed out articles about other officials who had faced backlash for similar remarks, and how community pressure had forced apologies or resignations. We sat at the dining table after Mia went to bed, surrounded by printouts and my laptop. "What if we go to the press, Avery? Anonymously at first. Show them the approval letter with your signature redacted. Let the public connect the dots." I shook my head. "The risk too high. If they trace it back to me, I lose my job. We lose the house, the stability Mia needs." She slammed her hand on the table, her voice rising. "And what about the message we send to her? That we let people like Harlan win because we are scared?" The words hung between us, heavy with truth and fear. I decided to meet Harlan myself. The next day I requested a private appointment through his office, citing the funding as the reason. His assistant sounded surprised but scheduled me for Thursday afternoon at City Hall. The drive downtown felt like heading into battle. I wore my best navy suit, the one Kira said made me look powerful, and carried a folder with the project documents. When I entered his outer office, the receptionist gave me a polite smile, unaware of the storm inside me. Harlan greeted me in his private suite, a large man with silver hair and a firm handshake. "Ms. Thompson, thank you for coming. I understand you wanted to discuss the community center funding." I sat across from him, my hands steady despite the rage building. "Councilman, I saw your speech last week. The one about two-mom families." His expression did not change. "Yes, it was well received in certain circles. What about it?" I leaned forward, keeping my voice level. "I signed that funding approval. My name is on it. And now I am wondering how I can in good conscience release money to someone who believes my family should not exist." He laughed, a short bark that echoed off the wood-paneled walls. "Personal feelings aside, Ms. Thompson, the project benefits the entire district. Jobs, programs for at-risk youth. Surely you can separate business from personal politics." The conversation escalated quickly. I laid out the statistics showing that children in same-sex households fared just as well as others when given love and support. He countered with religious arguments and claims about societal breakdown. By the end, neither of us had budged, but I saw the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes when I mentioned the possibility of public scrutiny. As I left his office, I felt a small victory, but also the weight of what came next. Word of our meeting spread through City Hall by Friday. Colleagues whispered in the break room, and my boss called me in for another closed-door talk. That weekend, Kira and I took Mia to the park, trying to maintain normalcy. She ran ahead chasing ducks while we walked hand in hand along the path. A group of mothers nearby glanced our way, and one whispered something to her friend. The prejudice was everywhere, subtle and overt. Back home, my mother called again, this time demanding I come to dinner alone to discuss my choices. I refused, and the call ended in tears on both sides. Kira held me afterward, reminding me that our family was worth fighting for. But the fight was already extracting its price. I found myself snapping at small things at work, and lying awake at night calculating the cost of every possible decision. Monday brought the first real blow. An email from the state ethics board landed in my inbox, requesting a meeting to discuss potential conflicts of interest in the Harlan project. Someone had tipped them off, though I had no proof who. The inner turmoil intensified. Was I willing to risk my professional reputation for principle? Kira urged me to stand firm, but I could see the worry in her eyes every time she looked at our bank statements. Mia remained blissfully unaware, asking only why Mommy seemed sad. I hugged her tighter each night, promising silently that I would protect her world, even if it meant tearing mine apart. The tension built like a storm on the horizon, and I knew the breaking point was near. The ethics board meeting took place in a sterile conference room downtown. 3 panel members sat across from me, their faces neutral, as they reviewed the documents I had submitted. The questions came rapid fire. Did you know Councilman Harlan's public stance on family values before approving the grant? Were there any personal motivations in your recommendation? I answered honestly no to the first and no to the second, but the doubt in their eyes was clear. By the end they promised a decision within 2 weeks. Walking out I felt exposed, raw and uncertain if my career would survive the scrutiny. Kira met me for lunch at our favorite cafe near the lake. She listened as I recounted every question, her hand never leaving mine. We have to fight this together, Avery. No more hiding. I nodded, but inside the fear gnawed. That afternoon I drafted a formal letter to Harlan demanding a public clarification of his remarks and threatening to recommend suspension of funds pending review. I sent it through official channels knowing it would reach him by morning. The response came faster than expected. His office called requesting another meeting, this time with his legal team present. The second confrontation happened in a larger room at City Hall. Harlan sat flanked by 2 lawyers while I stood alone, armed only with my principles and the folder of evidence. He opened aggressively. Your letter is nothing short of blackmail, Ms. Thompson. I remained calm. It's accountability, Councilman. You cannot spew hate and expect public money without consequence. The lawyers jumped in, citing free speech protections and the separation of personal views from public service. I countered with examples of other funded projects pulled for lesser reasons. The room grew heated, voices rising until Harlan slammed his hand on the table. This is personal for you because of your lifestyle. Admit it. The accusation hung in the air. I stood taller, meeting his gaze. Yes, it is personal. Because my family is the one you attacked. My wife and daughter deserve better than your judgment. The meeting ended without resolution, but I left knowing I had drawn a line. Back at the office, rumors swirled. A colleague I had considered a friend, Sarah, avoided my eyes in the hallway. Later I learned she had been the one to tip off the ethics board after overhearing my phone call with Kira. The betrayal cut deep. I had mentored her for 2 years, sharing advice on grants and life. Now she saw me as a liability. Home that evening felt like a sanctuary and a battlefield. Mia sensed the tension, asking if we were fighting. Kira and I reassured her with ice cream and stories. But once she was asleep, the argument resumed. You are risking everything, Avery. Our savings, our home. I shot back. And if I do nothing, I risk losing myself. The night ended in exhausted silence, but the decision was forming. I would not back down. The next day I submitted a formal request to freeze the Harlan funds pending further review, citing community concerns. The backlash was immediate. My inbox filled with angry emails from Harlan's supporters. My mother left a voicemail disowning my choices. Even Kira questioned if the price was too high. Yet in the quiet moments I felt a strange clarity. The inner conflict that had torn at me for weeks began to resolve into resolve. I was no longer just a bureaucrat. I was a mother, a wife, and a woman unwilling to fund hatred. The cost was mounting, but so was my strength. Sarah cornered me in the copy room the next afternoon, her face pale. I didn't mean for it to go this far, Avery. I was scared for my own job. I looked at her, the woman I had trusted, and felt only pity. Fear makes us do terrible things, Sarah. But it does not excuse them. She walked away, and I knew the professional isolation had begun. My parents arrived unannounced on a Saturday morning, their car pulling into the driveway while Kira and I were making breakfast. My father looked stern, my mother tearful. We need to talk, Avery, they said before even stepping inside. Mia ran to greet them, but the atmosphere turned cold when they saw Kira. The conversation in the living room was painful and predictable. Your lifestyle is tearing this family apart, my mother said. That councilman is saying what many of us think. You should have never signed that funding if you knew. I tried to explain, but their minds were set. They left after an hour with a final warning. Think about Mia. Traditional values matter. The visit left me shattered. Kira comforted me, but I could see her own pain. She had lost her parents years earlier to similar prejudice, and the echo hurt. That night we held each other talking about the family we had chosen rather than the one we were born into. Mia slept between us for the first time in months, sensing the storm. The following week brought more pressure. A local newspaper ran a story on the funding controversy, quoting anonymous sources who hinted at my personal connection to the issue. My boss called me in again, this time with human resources present. "We are placing you on administrative leave, Avery, pending the ethics review." The words felt like a death sentence. At home, the days blurred into a routine of job searching and homeschooling Mia to shield her from playground whispers. Kira took on extra freelance work to cover bills, but the strain showed in her tired eyes. One evening after Mia was in bed, she broke down. "I love you, Avery, but I am scared. What if we lose the house? What if Mia suffers because of our fight?" I held her, promising we would find a way, but inside doubt crept in. Had I been selfish? The moral dilemma consumed me. Standing up meant potential ruin. Staying silent meant betraying everything we believed. A surprise call from an old college friend who now worked in advocacy changed the trajectory. She had seen the news and offered to connect me with a civil rights organization willing to support a public statement. Kira encouraged me, and after long discussions we agreed. I recorded a short video explaining my position without naming Harlan directly. The organization posted it, and within hours it gained traction. Support poured in from unexpected places: other parents in same-sex families, colleagues who had stayed silent now speaking up. But the hate mail increased too. Death threats arrived in my inbox, forcing us to change our phone number. My parents called again, this time my father sounding broken. "We saw your video. We don't agree, but we don't want to lose you." It was not an apology, but it was a crack in the wall. Kira and I visited them the next weekend, Mia in tow. The meeting was awkward, but Mia's laughter softened the edges. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope that healing might be possible, even if slow. Yet the professional fallout continued. My leave extended, and whispers suggested the ethics board would recommend disciplinary action. The price was real, and it was mounting. Through it all, the inner awakening grew. I realized the true conflict was not just with Harlan or society, but with the version of myself that had once played it safe. Kira saw the change in me, and it brought us closer. Our nights became deeper conversations about values and legacy. Mia thrived despite the chaos, drawing pictures of our family that I pinned to the fridge like armor. The storm raged, but in the eye of it I found clarity. The choices were hard, but they were mine. The betrayal deepened when Sarah publicly distanced herself in a department email, claiming she had raised concerns about my objectivity from the beginning. The message was forwarded widely, and suddenly former allies avoided me. I sat in our living room reading the email over and over, the words blurring through angry tears. Kira took the laptop from me and pulled me into a hug. "She doesn't define you, Avery. None of them do." But the damage was done. Job offers that had seemed promising dried up overnight as the controversy followed my name. Harlan seized the moment, launching a counter-campaign, calling me a radical activist unfit for public service. His supporters picketed outside the state building, demanding my resignation. Kira and I watched the footage on the news, holding hands in silence. Mia asked why people were angry, and we explained as gently as possible that some people fear what they do not understand. She nodded, but her questions lingered. The legal battle escalated when Harlan's team filed a complaint alleging bias in the funding process. Our savings dwindled as we hired a lawyer to respond. In the midst of the chaos, an unexpected ally emerged. A senior state senator, who had quietly supported LGBT causes, reached out, offering behind-the-scenes support. She arranged a private meeting where we discussed strategy. Her advice was clear. Document everything. Build a coalition. Do not let them isolate you. The meeting gave me new energy. Kira and I spent nights drafting statements and reaching out to community leaders. The inner conflict shifted from doubt to determination. I was no longer fighting alone. Yet the personal cost remained steep. My mother had a health scare and blamed the stress on me during a hospital call. Kira's freelance clients pulled out, citing the negative publicity. Mia came home from a playdate in tears after a friend repeated Harlan's words. We comforted her, but the wound was deep. That night Kira and I lay awake talking about the trade-offs. Was this the life we wanted for her? The question haunted me, but so did the alternative of silence. The climax built when the ethics board issued its preliminary finding. They recommended a formal reprimand and 6 months suspension without pay. The news hit like a physical blow. I sat on the porch staring at the letter while Kira paced. "We can appeal," she said. "We can fight." But the fight had already taken so much. Friends distanced themselves. Family ties frayed. My sense of self was tested daily. In quiet moments I questioned if I had made the right choice signing that funding in the first place. Hindsight offered no comfort, only more questions. A turning point came during a community rally organized by the advocacy group. I spoke publicly for the first time, sharing our story without naming names. The crowd cheered, and for the first time I felt the power of standing in truth. Kira stood beside me, Mia on her shoulders, waving a small rainbow flag. The moment was beautiful and terrifying. Cameras flashed, and I knew the backlash would intensify. But in that instant the awakening solidified. I was no longer the woman who signed papers without considering the human cost. I was a voice for families like ours. The final hearing before the full ethics board was held in a packed auditorium. Reporters lined the back walls, and supporters from both sides filled the seats. I took the stand, my voice steady as I recounted the sequence of events from the initial approval to the viral speech to my attempts at accountability. Harlan testified after me, painting me as an activist with an agenda. The board deliberated for 3 hours before delivering their verdict. Administrative leave extended to 1 year with mandatory sensitivity training. No termination, but the stain remained. Walking out into the sunlight, I felt both defeated and liberated. Kira waited on the steps with Mia. We hugged as a family, ignoring the cameras. The road ahead was uncertain. I would need to find new work, perhaps in the nonprofit sector where my values aligned. Our finances would tighten, but we had each other. The betrayal from colleagues and family had hurt, but it had also revealed true allies. Sarah sent a private apology weeks later, but the trust was gone. My parents began tentative steps toward reconciliation, attending a family counseling session. In the months that followed, the controversy faded from headlines, but its lessons endured. I started a small consulting firm helping community groups navigate funding with integrity. Kira expanded her design business, focusing on LGBT-friendly brands. Mia grew stronger, more aware of the world, but secure in our love. The romantic moments between Kira and I deepened, forged in fire. Late-night talks on the porch turned into quiet affirmations of our bond. We had paid a high price, but we had chosen truth over comfort. Looking back, the inner conflicts, the family pressures, the social prejudice, and the moral dilemmas had all led to this awakening. I no longer saw the world in black and white, but in the messy gray of human choices. Harlan continued his career unscathed by the system that protected him. Yet I slept better knowing I had not funded his hate. The experience changed me in ways I could never have predicted. It taught me that standing up sometimes means standing alone first. As the leaves turned in Chicago, signaling another season of change, I sat with Kira on our porch watching Mia play in the yard. The question lingered in the air between us, unspoken but ever present. In the face of deep-rooted prejudice and the very real cost to career, family, and stability, was choosing to confront the hypocrisy and fight for what is right, the correct path, even when it demanded everything, or would silence and compromise have been the wiser choice to protect the ones we love most?